Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. I want to start off by talking about the Dallas Mavericks, who beat the Houston Rockets 110-91, 19-point win for them, which isn't anything super impressive. A lot of teams have beaten the Rockets by 19 points this season, but they did kind of do it without Luka Doncic, who is obviously a big piece of their team. So while it's not super impressive or anything, it's kind of just indicative of the way that things have been going for the Mavericks. For the last couple years, they've been very Luka dependent, and while they still are, obviously, without Luka Doncic, they're just not a great team because of how great he is. But even when he's not there, they can still win games now, and that's been something that's been huge for them over this recent stretch. Starting off the season, Luka missed a lot of time, and the Mavericks could not piece together wins, but as of recently, they have been doing so, which has been really big for their rise in the standings. And even with Luka, they've just looked like such a better team than they did earlier in the season, and a big piece of that is the Spencer Dinwiddie trade. And I'm going to be honest, I hated it. I really did not like that trade when it went down. Kristaps was supposed to be their second star, even if he's not always available, and hasn't quite panned out to be the star that they wanted him to be when they traded for him and signed him to that big max extension. He was still supposed to be that guy. And so when kind of out of nowhere he got traded at the deadline for Spencer Dinwiddie, who was having an awful season, to be honest, with the Wizards, he just did not look like himself coming off of that ACL injury. He looked a little bit slower. His jumper wasn't there. He was just not a good fit next to Bradley Beal, but there were multiple games where he'd score like 5-6 points, have like a couple assists. Like, it was completely different from the Dinwiddie we've seen of the past few seasons, where he's a guy that could go out and give you 20 on any night, drop a double-double with like 10 assists on some nights too. He was so good. He could knock down shots, which is the exact player that the Wizards were looking for when they signed him, and he just was not that guy for them. So getting him on the Mavericks, I didn't love it. Also bringing in Bertans' contract, trading away a guy, like I said, who was supposed to be your second star. So I didn't love the trade, and Dinwiddie has been incredible for this Mavericks team. Clutch moments, hitting game winners. His stats since coming to the Mavericks, he's averaging 17.6 points per game, 4.1 assists, 3.5 rebounds. He's shooting almost 50% from the field, 39% from three, 74% from the line. He's doing everything that the Mavericks need from him. Everything that, honestly, the Wizards were probably hoping of from him. I don't know if it was just a bad fit situation, if having the shooters around Spencer Dinwiddie here in Dallas has helped him out that much. But Dinwiddie has just completely turned his game around. He looks like a completely different player than he looked like earlier in the season, and the trade has paid immediate dividends for the Dallas Mavericks, so I need to apologize to the front office, to fans, the Mavericks, whoever. I was wrong about the Spencer Dinwiddie trade, although, to be honest, most Mavericks fans that I saw kind of agreed with me on that trade, that they didn't like it, that they didn't think it made a lot of sense, because it really did not on paper, but it's worked out great for them, and it's been cool to see. I like Dinwiddie a lot. He's a guy who's had a pretty fun career arc, where he was this guy that was just kind of like there, and then all of a sudden he made this huge leap, became an important piece to that Nets team for a couple years, and he finally got his bag in Washington. It didn't work out, but to see him now get traded to Dallas and be such an important piece, be that second facilitator, that when Luka or Jalen Brunson, or even when Brunson's on the floor, just giving them another option when they need it, has been huge. Another shooter at the guard position. He's tall enough to play the 3 or the 2 in like 3 guard lineups with him, Brunson, and Luka out there, and that's been a cool experience as well. Jason Kidd has used him really well in crunch time. He's been incredible. Dinwiddie with the Mavericks has the 5th highest point per game total in the fourth quarter amongst all players in the league this season. And in the fourth quarter since coming to Dallas, he's shooting 57% from the field and 52% from 3. So he's been super clutch in those big moments. He had that game winner, of course, against the Brooklyn Nets, and was technically a revenge game for him. It was crazy. It's been insane what he's been doing. And the Mavericks they're killing it right now. Right now, if they continue to win the way that they are, they've got a shot at going for home court advantage in that first round, if not at least getting up to the 5th seed, avoiding the Timberwolves and the Nuggets, who right now are kind of going back and forth with that 6 and 7 seed. The Mavericks are trying to avoid that, and a lot of that credit does go to Spencer Dinwiddie. Of course, Luka has still been Luka. He's been absolutely incredible, been an MVP candidate, one of the best players in the league, easily an All NBA player this season. Jalen Brunson has continued to do his thing. He's been great this season, particularly in the absence of Luka Doncic in games like tonight. Without Luka this season, he's averaging 20.4 points per game and 7.5 assists per game, shooting like 50, 35, and 80% splits. He's been so good. He's been really the guy that has stepped up the biggest in games without Luka Doncic, and something that I've always said about the best teams is that they can find ways to win without their best players. The Mavs are 5-1 in the last 6 games with Jalen Brunson playing and without Luka Doncic. So having Jalen Brunson there to be that lead guard in situations where you don't have Luka, having Spencer Dinwiddie come into the fold and add on to that as well. Like I mentioned, a ball handler, most importantly, a shooter that can knock down shots while also handling the ball, not just creating shots for others, but being able to knock down those shots himself is huge. That is exactly what Luka and this Mavericks team needed. They got it in Spencer Dinwiddie, and so he's been super incredible. Shout out to him. Shout out to the Mavericks. They've been balling, and I'm sorry I was so harsh. Moving from that game, we had the Boston Celtics, who beat the Jazz by 28 points. It wasn't very close. The Celtics continue to kind of just dominate the way that they've been playing. They're one of the hottest and most locked in teams right now, not just in the Eastern Conference, but in the NBA as a whole. Like, they just came in and eviscerated the Jazz. Like, this was never really close. They really took advantage of the lack of perimeter defense on Utah's team. 26 for Jason Tatum, 26 for Jaylen Brown. You had 13 assists for Marcus Smart, just continuing to dominate, like I said. The Jazz were without Bojan Bogdanovic, but even so, like, Donovan Mitchell had 37 points and they lost by 28. Jordan Clarkson had a really rough game. Mike Conley has not quite been the player that he was last season for them. The Jazz feel like they're kind of just stuck right now. They're like in the middle of the pack. They're not a great team, but they're also like still a good team. It's a weird situation. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with Utah, but for right now, they've kind of got some stuff to figure out. Moving on from that, we had the Golden State Warriors who beat the Miami Heat by 14 points, resting Clay. Steph still hurting. Draymond Green was also not in this game. Their leading scorer was Jordan Poole, who had 30, and then 3 guys with 23 points, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Damian Lee. It was a really bad loss. I'm not going to say it was a really bad loss for the Miami Heat, losing now back-to-back games where they definitely should have won, where two teams were resting their best players. Like I mentioned, Golden State was not playing a lot of their top guys, and you look at the last game against Philly, where they didn't have Embiid or James Harden, and the Heat lost. It really blew up tonight when Jimmy Butler got in an altercation with not just Udonis Haslem on the sideline yelling at each other. Udonis Haslem said he would fight him. Eric Spoelstra was getting into it with Jimmy Butler. After the game, they said that they're just passionate, they're frustrated, and they want to win, which does make sense. I don't think it's anything to be super worried about, but it is kind of something to keep an eye on that the Heat are losing these games. These are games they need to win. It is really close in the Eastern Conference, and you don't want to slip at all in the standings if you can help it. Having every ounce of home court advantage with so many great teams out there is going to be super vital for not just the Miami Heat, but whoever tries to come out of that Eastern Conference. So the Heat, these are the games they have to win. You've got to beat these teams. Especially like Philly last game, when that's one of the teams that after tonight's win over the Lakers, Philly is only 1.5 games back of the Heat for that first seed. And there is not just one, but I believe 3 teams right now that are tied. I think it's the Bucks, Sixers, and Celtics that are all tied for that second seed. Only 1.5 games back of Miami. These are wins they've got to get. They've got to figure this thing out. Not a great game from Tyler Hero. Victor Oladipo didn't have a good one either. Jimmy was all right in this one. Bam had a great game with 25 and 9. Kyle Lowry had 26 and 9 assists. It's just they couldn't really get everyone on the same page. They weren't as great defensively as they have been. The Heat have some problems to kind of figure out, and they've got to figure them out quick, or the Eastern Conference is a bloodbath. You can't have any moments of kind of like misstep in that Eastern Conference, even in the first round, because there is a strong possibility they could be playing Brooklyn in that first round. And you cannot, especially with Kyrie just recently announced today, he's going to be able to play home games. And so you've got no margin for error in that Eastern Conference. So the Heat, they've got to figure things out. You've got to be able to win these games. Moving on from them, the Phoenix Suns beat the Minnesota Timberwolves 125 to 116. This was a game where this was a very playoff atmosphere type game between the Phoenix Suns and Timberwolves, who kind of seem like they don't like each other. Devin Booker was yelling at fans. There was flagrant fouls, technicals, beefs, guys side-eyeing each other. typical playoff basketball type stuff. The Phoenix Suns, Devin Booker in particular, he had 28 points and 7 assists. You had DeAndre Ayton, who had a career high 35 points to go with 14 rebounds and 3 dimes. He had an incredible game against Karl Anthony Towns. It was just all around another example of how the Phoenix Suns are still the best team in the league. Even without Chris Paul, they continue to win games against teams that are really, really good. In the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been on a big roll, they've been the best offensive team since the All-Star break. Karl Anthony Towns just won Player of the Week, and even still, the Suns find a way to win without Chris Paul. They're just super deep. I think Devin Booker kind of deserves more love in the MVP conversation. I'm not saying he should win it, but I think there could be an argument made that he should be 4th or 5th in that conversation. So shout to D-Book. He's been hooping, and shout to DeAndre Ayton for setting a new career high. And finally, we had the Brooklyn Nets, who played the Memphis Grizzlies. A 12-point win for the Grizzlies without Ja Morant. Probably the craziest part of this thing is Kyrie Irving had 43 points, and KD had 35, 11, and 8. So if I told you those things and then was like, did the Nets win? There was a high chance that you would say yes, because that seems like what would happen. But no, the Grizzlies put up 132 points without Ja Morant, 21 for Dillon Brooks, 13 for Jaren Jackson, 16 for Tyus Jones, who has been a great backup guard for them. I feel like he's kind of gone under the radar. 23 from Desmond Bane, 23 from DeAnthony Melton, 14 and 10 for Brandon Clark, 10 for Kyle Anderson. They're just one of the deepest teams in the league, period. Maybe even the deepest team in the league. I think it's probably with them. Phoenix, Golden State, when they're healthy, is sort of up there too. It's been super impressive what the Grizzlies have continued to do. I think they're 15-2. Something like that. They have a great record. Maybe it's 13-2 without Ja Morant, which is crazy because Ja is one of the better players in the league. He's been a top 10 player so far this season, and without him, they're still really good, which kind of just both speaks to their coaching with Taylor Jenkins, who I think he's got a good chance to win Coach of the Year. I think he's going to be in a lot of those conversations. The depth on this team and just kind of how they have this big next man up mentality. They showcased it tonight on a national stage, and it was super impressive to watch what they've been doing, what they're going to continue to do. And I'm really excited to see how things pan out for them in the playoffs, how far they can go, because they've got a real chance to make a run to the Western Conference Finals. So shout out to the Memphis Grizzlies for getting this dub. Just a really fun team. The vibes are really good with the Memphis Grizzlies. So those are my thoughts on the games tonight. Let me know what your takeaways were. What were your favorite moments from the games? I know I didn't get to all of them. I didn't get to the OKC game, which we won in a tank battle against the Orlando Magic because Ignas Brazdeikis refused to let us out-tank the Magic. He was a minus 39 in 22 minutes, so I didn't talk about that one. There were just a couple games I couldn't get to, but if you have some thoughts about those games as well, let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know what you think about the Dinwiddie trade now that it's kind of been a little bit. Like me, were you wrong, and do you need to make an apology? Let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.